Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing, should Dumpee initiate contact? I provide audio coaching to help people try and get their ex back or get a new girlfriend or boyfriend. Check out my website for more details. www.dateme.tips. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing, should Dumpee initiate contact? So if you have been dumped, it can be very confusing if you should initiate contact with your ex. Whether you want to try to get your ex back or not, this can be an anxious time about what to do for the best. In today's podcast, I'm going to discuss 3 points to consider about whether a dumpee should initiate contact with their ex. So let's get straight into this, and number 1 is in most instances. So in most instances, the answer is no. In my belief, in most instances, if you have been dumped, you should never contact your ex again unless your ex contacts you first. However, there are some caveats to this rule. There are some reasons, some possibilities, some extreme circumstances where I do believe that a dumpee can and maybe should contact their ex even if they don't receive contact first. I will be going into these a little bit later in today's podcast, so please make sure you keep listening. But it's very important right now that you understand in the vast majority of instances, the answer is no. I do not believe you should contact your ex if you've been dumped unless you hear from your ex first. We have to understand that when somebody ends a relationship, they are feeling a very low level of romantic emotional attraction. If a breakup takes place, if attraction levels are so low, then if you was to contact your ex for a reason which isn't what I'm going to get into a little bit later, then we have to understand that this is unlikely to be beneficial in your cause to either get your ex back or even just to maintain some stability of connection. You know, sometimes somebody gets dumped, sometimes a dumpee is in a position where the relationship has ended, they don't want their ex back, but they just want to be on positive terms. Well, even if you just want that, even if you don't want your ex back, I strongly suggest never contacting your ex again unless they contact you first, because you must understand when somebody is feeling a very low level of romantic emotional attraction for you, then unfortunately what this means in most instances is they don't want to hear from you. So if you want to try to get your ex back and you decide to ignore this advice and start chasing your ex, start messaging, pleading, begging, reasoning, you are going to be presenting yourself as a low-value individual, and you're already low value in their mind. When a breakup takes place, the dumper is higher value, the dumpee is lower value, and if you chase your ex after a breakup, then you will present yourself as somebody even lower value, so your value will decrease further. If you want to try to get your ex back, you need to be making sure that the scales of value are roughly level. So if you're low value at the start of this process after the breakup, and then you chase your ex to the point of where your value drops even lower, then as you can see, the scales of value are not improving, they're not starting to level out, they're actually starting to look even more lopsided. And therefore, as you can see, there is less chance of your dumper wanting to reconnect in a romantic way. But additionally to this, we have to understand, but even if you don't want your ex back, if you're a dumpee and you think to yourself, look, I just like to be friends, or I just want to be on positive speaking terms at least, then this is not going to help either. If you've been dumped, then your ex is basically saying to you, I'm not wanting you as part of my life right now. I'm not ready to be in a position where we can move forward in any way. Okay, you have to respect your ex's decision. You have to respect the dumper's decision that they do not want to communicate. They do not want to be part of your life journey at this time. This doesn't mean they're not going to change their mind in the future. There is every possibility that if you do everything right, you will hear from your ex again. This could be you getting your ex back, or even if you don't get them back, this could be something where you build some type of platonic friendship if you both want to. Now look, if you hold romantic feelings for your ex, I would never suggest accepting a platonic friendship. You don't want to be friend-zoned, but that is the story for another podcast. Ultimately, what I'm trying to get across is that even if you don't want your ex back, if you've been dumped, you should never contact your ex again unless they contact you first, because they are saying to you, this is over, I don't want to be in any type of connection with you. And this would also count platonic friendship or any type of communication at this time. Please give your ex space. And when I say space, I mean space until if and when you hear from them again. There is no 100% guaranteed way to get your ex back, and there is no 100% guaranteed way to hear from your ex again, even if you don't want to get back with them. So unfortunately, as a Dumpee, in most instances, you have to understand that unless you hear from your ex again, you need to move forward with your life in a way that doesn't involve you chasing them, which doesn't involve you initiating contact. Because whatever outcome you're looking for, reaching out to an ex who has dumped you is very unlikely to develop in a situation which you would desire. It comes across as low value, it comes across as disrespectful, not understanding, not accepting, and not respecting the dumper's decision, and therefore whether you want them back or not, you should not be reaching out. Now, of course, there are always exceptions to the rule, and there are caveats to this rule as well. And in today's podcast, I'm going to be getting into 2 instances in which I believe that as a Dumpee, you should be reaching out to your ex, even if you haven't heard from them first. So this goes against what we've spoke about in point number 1, but these are in the minority. These moments, these rules, these caveats, these exceptions are not often. So please don't try and cheat the breakup. Please don't try and cheat the system by creating a scenario where you're really clutching at straws saying, yes, I fit into this bracket or I fit into that bracket. Look, most of you aren't going to. Points 2 and points 3 are not going to be for everybody. They're going to be for a minority of people, but they're still important for you to understand. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast about should Dumpee initiate contact. And point number 2 is if there is a legal reason. So one of the 2 reasons that I'm going to go into in today's podcast about when a Dumpee should reach out to their ex, even if they haven't heard from them first, is if there is a legal reason. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it goes without saying, anything within the legal realm. So this could be something really, really serious, or something which you might not deem as serious, but technically speaking, would fit into this bracket. I'll give you 2 examples. Example number 1 is possessions. This is the most likely reason as for why you might need to do this. If your ex-dumper has in their possession something of yours which you truly need, then you have every right to ask for it back. Now, please, please, please make sure you truly need this. If you've left a pair of socks at your ex's house, I don't really think you should be using this as an excuse to reach out to them. It would make you look pathetic because, let's be honest, do you really need that pair of socks? I think that looks like you're just trying to cheat the breakup. No, what I'm talking about is something of value, either sentimental or monetary value. Let's say, for instance, you've left your laptop at your ex's house. Well, you have every right to ask for it back. Now, I'm not saying necessarily you should be doing this instantly at the time of a breakup, unless, of course, you need it. Maybe you need it instantly for work or for whatever reason you may need. But if this is a possession where you can at least let the dust settle somewhat, then I suggest you do this. Maybe contacting your ex after a number of weeks, asking for your possessions back. Maybe you have some of their possessions at your house and you could say, look, can we meet up and just exchange possessions? That is reasonable, and that is something that as a Dumpee you have every right to do. Another angle of the legalities could be something such as you receive something through the post that belongs to your ex. Maybe it is a bill. Maybe it's something to do with tax returns, something legal. You know what I'm saying here. It covers all of those boundaries. In this instance, you have a responsibility to contact your ex and say, look, I've just received some post, I've just received some mail for you. When would you like to pick this up, or should I just drop this round? Whatever the situation transpires to be, if you have possessions of your ex which you believe they truly need, and this includes personal mail, then you do need to contact them. You know, this is a legality. You can't be hoarding your ex's mail. You can't be keeping your ex's post or possessions, and they can't be doing that for you either. Now, what I would strongly suggest is that you always maintain a stable mindset. Don't get into an argument. Don't be somebody who is argumentative or demanding. Stay cool, calm, and collected. Be happy, carefree, and fun. Be positive. Just speak about things on point in a matter of fact. This isn't an excuse for you to try to start flirting with your ex, trying to start asking your ex out once more, because this is not the time or the place. Their level of romantic emotional attraction is unlikely to have risen to the necessary high point to want to reconnect with you if they haven't reached out to you first. So if you've not heard from your dumper and you believe that you are in a legal position where you need to contact them, keep things on point. Don't start flirting. Don't start trying to reconnect because it is unlikely to help you. Make sure you are positive, make sure you have a stable mindset, and by doing this, you are showing your ex that you are stable-minded. Most dumpees are not stable-minded at the time of the breakup, and this is a great opportunity for you to show your ex, but if and when they want to speak with you again, that you will be positive, you will be somebody who can speak with them in a normal, natural way, and you are somebody who is ready for communication if and when they want to reach out. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about should dumpees initiate contact. And point number 3 is if there is an emergency. So the final point of today's podcast, and the second reason that as a dumpee, I believe you have the right to reach out to your ex, even if you haven't heard from them first, is if there is an emergency. So again, what you deem as an emergency has got to be something which is logical, which is serious, and which is understandable. This could be some type of weather warning, for instance. Let's say that you've heard a weather warning, maybe where you live you do have extreme weather conditions, you find out there's going to be a tornado or a hurricane hitting where they live, something that you know that they're probably unlikely to be paying attention to because maybe you know they don't check out the news, but don't check out the weather. This is something that you could reach out. This is an important emergency warning. Now, there are, of course, many possible reasons as for what you would deem as an emergency, but please, like I said with point number 2, don't try and cheat the breakup. Don't try and make an excuse and say, yes, this is an emergency, I'm going to reach out to my ex, and it's not an emergency at all. This is not an instance of where you reach out to your ex and say, hey, guess what? Your favourite band is playing in your town next week. That is not an emergency. Now, that type of concept of communication is something which you might be using further down the line if and when you hear from your ex again and you get to that stage and you can fit something like that in. But this is not something to be reaching out to your ex if you've been dumped and you haven't heard from them first. So that is not an emergency. An emergency is something serious. It is something where there is, of course, a danger to life, or something where there is danger to your ex, their family, their friends, something along those lines is an emergency. Again, use your common sense. I can't hold your hand through this. You've got to understand, but if you try and cheat this by contacting your ex for a reason which isn't an emergency, well, unfortunately, you are likely to get no response at all. They're going to think you're pathetic. If your ex receives contact and they can see that you're clutching at straws, but you're trying to make excuses as to why to reach out to them, they are unlikely to respond, and you never know, you might even get blocked. So please, only use points 2 and points 3 if they are genuine. You can't cheat the breakup. You can't try and pull the wool over your ex's eyes. They will understand the truth. In the vast majority of instances, if you've been dumped, you should never contact your ex again unless they contact you first. And points 2 and 3 are in the minority of instances. The vast majority of you listening will not come across points 2 and 3 in your situation. It's important that you understand them, but please don't try and find an excuse to use them unless it is genuine. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.
Yeah, if you miss your ex, we can help with that. Help you get him back, or we can help find you someone else. Yeah, Vincent, the relationship coach, giving you some insight, bringing you a new approach. DateMe.tips, go and check the site, giving you advice, helping with your love life. Get your ex back, or move to the next. Ain't no sweat, Vincent got you. Finding love ain't no problem. Yeah, DateMe.tips, check it out now.